Okay, this is running rampant. And what I'm hearing a lot is that people are leaving their jobs because they're being asked to take on excessive amounts of responsibility at work. Does that sound like something familiar in your life? I also know that there are quite a few people, especially since COVID, where family members are asking you to take on more and more responsibilities. Maybe it's caregiving for a loved one. Maybe it's taking on more responsibility with the children. The children are really wanting to get out, and so they're asking to go out and be a part of other co-curricular activities. The point here is that we've got a lot of people who are upset because their time is being eaten up and their energy is exhausted, and it's because of one single thing: the inability to say no. I'm Tracey Knight, and I'm your codependency coach. And today, what I want to talk about is how often do you say yes when what you really meant or what you should have said was no? That's the topic for today. So I want to talk about this. I was doing a speaking engagement last night for quite a few human resource professionals, and we were talking about burnout for human resource officers, which they are typically like your go-to person, similar to nurses. Like nurses are like the buffer, right? They are the go-to people in the hospital and in the doctor's office. So a lot of people go to them. They're like the GOAT of the organization. Well, the same is true for HR. Like they're the GOAT, the greatest of all time and the go-to source. Well, those people oftentimes get burnt out because they have a lot of people coming to them asking for various requests. And so last night's discussion was, what do HR professionals do when they are actually experiencing burnout? So many of the people on the panel addressed many of the common things, which I 100% agree to, which was making sure the organization's leadership begins to put in various practices to support not only the employees, but HR representatives, things like putting in a gym and other things that can just help with burnout. But the thing that I wanted to point those HR professionals back to was themselves. Because everything in your life begins and ends with you, the person in the mirror. And so what I noted was that a lot of people who were asking questions really wanted to blame and create a sense of victim villainhood where they're blaming the organization or the boss, the supervisor, for coming to them and asking them to take on more and more projects. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you, where your boss is asking you, can you take this on? We've noticed that a lot of people have left the workplace to start businesses, so the work still needs to get done, and sometimes supervisors or organizations are asking people to take on additional responsibilities. Well, the issue is not you should say no to everything. That is not what I'm espousing. What I am espousing is that you need to be discerning about what your capacity is. I'm suggesting that you learn to exude a sense of ownership for your own capacity, what we would call PPC balance. PPC balance in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talks about the balance between production and production capability, or what I like to say, your personal center. Let me explain a little bit more about that. Production is anything that you do that expends energy, right? So when you go to work, that expends energy, right? So anytime that you're doing work, that expends energy. When you're taking your kids to the daycare or you are taking them to co-curricular, that expends energy, right? So there's production in there. When you go to work, that expends energy. Production capability is what you deposit into yourself to increase your capacity to be able to deliver on the production. So that basically means, how often do you get up and you make sure that you meditate in the morning, that you go for a run or a walk to make sure that you are boosting your energy levels, that you eat healthy, that those are all deposits that you make into yourself. That will increase your capacity, your bandwidth. But what happens to people who are struggling with codependency is they say yes to the production and no to the production capability. So what happens, and I'm going to give you a very simple analogy. If you look at yourself like a bank account, right? So every time you make a deposit into the bank account does what? It grows. So anytime we get paid and we make a deposit into our retirement, our trust, or our bank savings account, that account is going to grow. Well, that's the same thing that happens when you take care of yourself, when you prioritize yourself. Okay, so when you do that, you're making deposits into yourself. Conversely, in a bank account, you must pay bills. So paying bills is making withdrawals from the account. Well, just like people are going to ask you to do things. The boss is going to come to you and ask you whether or not you have the capacity to take on something else. It's not for them to determine for you, although that is a part of it. Like, of course, we want them to be discerning and concerned and all that, but it's you, it's your body, it's your life. So you must own and take responsibility for understanding whether or not you have the capacity, because that next project is going to make a withdrawal from you. The question is always whether or not you have more deposits than you have withdrawals, because if you have more deposits than withdrawal, you're in the black. If you have more withdrawals than you do deposits, you're in the red. And this is all coming from the place of learning how to say, make your yes, and your no, your no. So the consequence of not saying no, the negative consequence of saying yes all the time when you really mean no, is burnout. And so many people are talking about burnout as if it is other people's fault and responsibility. And I just want to point you back to yourself. Who was the person who said yes? Who was the person that didn't ask if there was another way of approaching the project? Who was the person who didn't say, when I'm doing A, I'm not doing B. I'm happy to take on the project, but this project over here will be delayed. That is you owning your power. That is you setting a standard for yourself. And when you do that, your personal center, your personal capacity goes up exponentially, because over time, what happens is you learn how to trust you. You learn how to trust you. You learn how to trust that you will take a stand for yourself. It's not about your supervisor. It's about you, because it's your life. So what do we do with this? Where do we go from here? Well, as I've said so many other times, you are not alone with this. One of the things I want to invite you to do is to really check in when your supervisor, your children, your spouse, your family is asking you to take on coordinating the next family reunion. Let me digress for a minute, because that used to be the thing with me. Every family member wanted me to coordinate their wedding and then funerals, and yes, I have the skill of doing that, and I didn't mind doing it for some people, but it got to a point where I really did not want to do it. I didn't enjoy doing it. Now, I could have kept saying yes. I could have done that, because that would have people pleased the family members. We addressed that in one of the other episodes. But what I began to say is, this is my last wedding. This is the last one that I will coordinate. And while I understand that you all may want me to do that, I'm complete with this experience. And I set the standard. We talked about that in another episode. I set the standard for myself. So I want you to check in with yourself first to see where you may be saying yes when really you need to say no. And part of the way that you do that is to check in and see if you have the bandwidth. See if you have what I call the margin to be able, in other words, are you in the black? And if by doing this act, this commitment, this project, it's not going to throw you into the red. Because you need to have enough margin to recognize that life is going to throw you some changes. Life is going to, there's going to be a pivot. somewhere. So you can't just take your bandwidth right up to the place where one little thing could throw you over the edge. What you have to do is make sure you have enough margin that next project is not going to throw you over. So I want you to be mindful, tune into your body and check and see, like, does my body say I have the capacity? Then check your schedule. When you're doing A, you are not doing B. So this is one of my other tips, is stop thinking that you can multitask, because multitasking is a fallacy. We really only do one thing at a time, okay? And we want to do things and do them well. It's time out for doing things at 75% of our quality standard. Notice that word standard again. No, I want to always try to operate at like a 90% quality level based on my standard of what excellence is, because I want to give my full attention, my full energy. I want to be fully present to whatever it is that I do, because it represents me. So check in to see whether or not you are really giving this much effort or this much effort, because you really only have this much bandwidth. Finally, I want to invite you, if you are really struggling, with saying no and you're saying yes over and over and over again, scroll to the bottom and look at the links. There are going to be several down there. One is going to give you an opportunity to book a call with me at no charge to you. Book a free consultation so that we can get to the underlying issue of codependency that is causing you to repetitively overextend yourself. The other link is going to invite you to come and join me on this 30-day journey to break free of codependency by conquering it. You will not want to miss this boot camp, because it's done at your own pace, and it is also going to give you some of the habits that you will need to completely liberate yourself from codependency in as little as 30 days. Okay, I think that's it for this particular episode. So I just want to remind you once again to like us, to tag us, to share us, and to subscribe to the channel. But most importantly, I want to invite you to share your comments below. Include your questions. It allows us to get better at what we're doing. And then it also gives me an opportunity to actually address some of the specific issues that are coming up in your life. And besides, other people will learn from what it is that you share. You'd be surprised at the number of people who are going through the exact same thing that you're going through. Okay, that's it for this particular episode. I'm Tracey Knight, and I'm your codependency coach. I want to remind you that today is the day that we take back, transform, and win at the game of life.